Thank you for coming this morning. My name is Ryan McCrady. I'm the city manager for the city of Decatur. And I just want to take a few minutes here to walk through our proposed budget that the council will be talking about tonight during study session. Now, this is not the vote tonight. This budget, as we've talked about before, it looks a little bit unusual because it's what we call a stub budget. We couldn't think of a better name than that, but it's only an 8-month budget. As you're probably aware, the city is working on changing our fiscal year. Currently, the fiscal year runs from May 1st through the end of April. We want to change our fiscal year to be lined up with the calendar year. Because of the unusual length of the budget cycle, revenues and expenses aren't lining up quite exactly. And so the budget that we present shows a $500,000 deficit in the general operating fund. The budget is balanced, even though it looks like there's a $500,000 deficit, and that's due to the timing differences that we have in the budget. The stub budget does have about $500,000 in capital funding put into it for some additional capital projects. It includes about $350,000 for demolition of unsafe structures, which is the same amount of money we have in the current budget. And the city headcount is flat in this proposed stub budget. The state's about $2 million behind on their state income tax distributions also. And that $2 million is not factored into what our fund balance projections are. We assume that they are $2 million behind. Our accounting system is what's called a modified cash basis. So we budget, and our accounting work is done based on what's cash is in the bank, not based on accruals or anticipations in the future. The city will continue to work on the drainage projects in Nelson Park and the northeast drainage ditch that we started in the current budget. The staff is continuing to work on those. Some of those projects are difficult, and they are taking some time to get done. Main and Franklin Streets from Wood Street, and this is a listing of capital projects, but Main and Franklin from Wood Street down to the lake, that will be completed with the repaving. The final phase of downtown streetscape will begin. That'll be the Franklin Street corridor, and we expect that to begin after August 1st. So it will be after the Decatur celebration is completed. The South Shores Bridge project will likely be completed during this stub budget. We also believe that we're going to get state approval of a loan from a revolving loan fund to do some very critical work on one of our major sewers in the city. We also have about $1.7 million of state motor fuel tax funds that we'll use on various street projects around the city. The City Council approved a resolution at their last meeting to allocate those funds to use for those street projects. Those bids will be going out, and we'll get that work done this summer. There's various parts around the city where that work is being done. We'll continue to do preventative maintenance work on the Lake Decatur Dam. We also expect to install the Asian carp fish barrier near the dam. If the council approves a rate increase for the water rate, we will begin the preparatory work on the sediment basin during the fall of this year. And then in the spring of 2014, we'll begin dredging in Basin 1. We also are very close to having the permits for some of our supplemental wells and secondary water supply sources. We could have as many as 2 to 4 of those wells up and operating by late summer or early fall. The other opportunity for capital projects is something that other cities have looked at, and that's what we call targeted revenues. Targeted revenues are seen as, are better accepted by the community because they feel like they get a deliverable for the tax increase. Like the sewer increase, they'll get the sewers better maintained. Something other cities have done to help fund work on their capital and their road projects is they've looked at what they call local option motor fuel tax. Nobody likes to talk about new taxes, but I do think it's important as city manager that I inform the council of what other cities have done to help fund road projects and things like that. Now, why is a fuel tax a good choice for road maintenance concerns? Well, really what it does is it puts the burden of the cost of fixing the infrastructure on the people who put the most wear and tear on it. In theory, the more you drive, the more fuel you buy, the more wear and tear you put on the roads. So I think that's why some cities have adopted it as a way to do that. So in summary, the budget was difficult for a couple of reasons. One, they're always difficult when you're looking at revenues and expenses, but also because we had a shortened fiscal year, and we had to go basically line item through the budget to find out when we spend the money in that expense line item to make sure we had the money in the 8 months. You just kind of take for granted that the money's going to get spent in a 12-month period, so we had to go through that line by line to make to make that work out. Because of that stub budget, our revenues and expenses aren't lining up like they typically do in a 12-month budget. And like I said before, if council concurs, we could vote on this at the April 15th meeting of the City Council. If they want to wait 2 weeks, we can do it at the end of April on April 29th. And that's all my prepared remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.